Hello. It is Wednesday. It made it to the middle of the week. It's hump day if you're listening on Wednesday, the 15th of January. It's also the middle of the month, and I have two very, very good guests joining me today. One of our all-time favorites, Celeste Headlee, is back. We have a great conversation coming up. That starts at 35 minutes. But before that, longtime listener, supporter, and friend of mine, Ron Gonzalez, out there in Southern California. You might have met him at PODJAM. You might have seen him at one of our hangouts. He joined us this past Monday night and told us about how he's experiencing the fires. I've been closely connected with him from the start, and he and I had a really thoughtful conversation. Got to ask him a bunch of questions about what it's like, how he's doing, how he's handling it, etc. That starts at 49 minutes. I've also got your good stuff, headlines and clips, so it's a good one today. I'm very happy that you're here for it. After the show, I'm going to head up to Vermont with my girls. Really excited to go skiing with just the three of us for 2 days. So taking a couple days off. Tomorrow I will share my conversation with Dr. Aaron Carroll, which was really good. Friday I won't be posting anything. No hangout tomorrow night. I will likely get something up over the weekend, and that is the schedule for the next few days here on Stand Up. Can't do any of it without your support. Thank you so much for being here with me together through all of it over these past few years. So happy to have you. Hope to see you in Las Vegas, March 28th through 30th. It's PODJAM, Aaron Carroll, Eric Segall, J.L. Cauvin, Maura, Quint, Christian Finnegan, Ophira, Eisenberg, John Carroll, and Tim Wise are all scheduled to join us. Very excited for that in late March. Tickets are available now. Join us for a 3-day experience. Hang out with many of your favorite guests and more. Each other, most importantly. All right, let's get it started. And I'm so glad you're here with me because Ron Gonzalez coming up. He told me to please share the end of Jimmy Kimmel's monologue from last night on Jimmy Kimmel Live, where his producers did a really good job putting together a montage of, well, the helpers. I thought this was really good. Ron, thanks for giving me a heads up on it. This is your good stuff this morning. It's real good. I think the audio translates almost as good as the imagery that goes along with it. Take it away, Jimmy Kimmel.
Story in a moment. You know, over most of the last week, we've seen some very upsetting images, but we've also seen countless examples of courage and compassion from our neighbors under literal fire. And tonight, to show you what you might not be seeing living in other places, we want to share some of the more uplifting stories from our fire-ravaged town.
It's known as the City of Angels for a reason. In the midst of the destruction, embers of hope as the community and beyond unites to offer help.
In times of need, you look for the helpers. The view from Air 7, clear evidence of the massive community support.
We stick together when it's time to stick together.
We are giving away free food, diapers, coffee.
That is a human conveyor belt. Those boxes they are passing are filled with supplies.
Donations have been pouring in at centers throughout Southern California. It is a grassroots effort. Everything from toiletries and clothing to bottled water.
We have diapers, we have supplies, we have everything that you possibly can need.
We got like 600 hot dogs. So that day we gave like 600 hot dogs to the fire department. Whoever came, honestly, it was open for whoever was affected.
These street vendors went on TikTok Live and truly changed everything.
They free store for people who have lost everything, who have been affected by the fires, to come and take what they need to replenish their wardrobes.
I came across this vehicle right here, which says chicken noodle soup for the soul.
I was stunned. We've had close to 5,000 people in Los Angeles go online to Red Cross to volunteer. Extraordinary.
One of the main things is emotional and spiritual care. I just walked around the inside there and talked and sat and looked at a bunch of people in the eye. And just being present with them is one of the best things you could do.
The Pasadena Humane Society is caring for more than 300 animals from the Eden Fire evacuations. The donations were so great, the shelter cannot accept any more pet supplies.
Victor Edgar Rapella put out the most heartfelt donations, toys.
It's really important because as a kid, I didn't have any toys, and it's so nice like having some kids having fun.
Hundreds of people showed up to clean up the Rose Bowl's debris-cluttered public parks.
The tears you see are of gratitude for people volunteering out of the kindness of their own hearts.
These two incredible people lost their home in the wildfire this week, but they are here today. They are helping feed people that have lost just as much as they have.
A lot of us, we come from the streets. A lot of us were homeless in L.A., and we got a second chance at life, so it's only right to give back.
Nico, his house burned down. He's also been helping people.
I see the community mobilizing. I see people making phone calls. I see people coming here and saying, how can I volunteer?
We're born for this moment. Yeah. We were born in response to the AIDS crisis. We had the COVID crisis. Now we have the fire crisis. This is what we do. We show up.
In the worst moments of humanity, the best of humanity always shows up.
Thank you all. We have a very good show for you.
In the worst moments of humanity, the best of humanity always shows up. That last voice you might recognize, and he would know that's Chef Jose Andres. It seems to be showing up at every single horrible situation all over the world, from Gaza to North Carolina to anywhere else that people are in need. So he would know. All right. Well, that is your good stuff for today. I think that about covers it. And I am very grateful for you. So many of you have shown up for me. I've tried to show up for you and created this community along with you. And we all have our own personal disasters and horrible moments and days, and we need each other. This community coming together is the best thing for me in my life, and I know a lot of you care so deeply about it as well. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, that's your good stuff, and now let's get to your headlines and clips. Of course, the wildfires continue to be the biggest story. The greater Los Angeles area, they've killed at least 24 people. Southern California bracing for extremely critical conditions caused by a new period of Santa Ana winds today. Through tomorrow, across parts of Los Angeles and Ventura counties, as the battle to contain raging blazes go on. So it's not over. I think that's fair to say. But there are other stories, other headlines. Obviously, the huge story yesterday was around the confirmation hearing of Pete Hegseth. I'll get to that in a moment. In the Middle East, Israel and Hamas are on the, quote, brink of agreeing on a ceasefire in Gaza and the release of hostages held there, according to the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, on Tuesday, raising hopes for some respite to the violence after more than 15 months of war. I mean, aren't they just waiting for Trump to give him the credit? Isn't that the secret deal that Netanyahu and Trump had? Yeah, I think that's what we're going to see, unfortunately. In Russia, Moscow said that Tuesday that Ukraine had fired 6 U.S.-made ATACMS, that's the acronym, ballistic missiles, 6 U.S.-made Storm Shadow cruise missiles, and at least 146 drones in Russia in an attack that it said would not go unanswered. The horrific war continues there. Yesterday, a divided House approved legislation that aimed to bar transgender women and girls from participating in school athletic programs designated for female students, as Republicans sought to wring a political opportunity from a social issue that helped them win the 2024 elections. At least that's what they thought. The bill was approved almost entirely along party lines on a vote 218 to 206. It would prohibit federal funding from going to K-12 schools that include transgender students on women's sports teams. So the 12 transgender girls that want to play volleyball, that is the thing that they are trying to prevent. No matter how you feel about this issue, no matter how you feel about it, the idea that the House decided to pass this first, work on this bill first, of all of the things that are in the American people's interest, of all of the concerns that we have, the dangers that we face on a daily basis, this is the top issue for them, and it's pretty upsetting, pretty gross. I'll have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez coming up on that. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau announced yesterday that it was suing Capital One for its horrible commercials. No, for misleading consumers about their savings account interest rates and cheating them out of more than $2 billion in interest. Well, I shudder to think what will happen to the CFPB efforts like these after next week. I don't know that we'll be seeing these headlines, if it's even still there. From the FDA, with just days left in the Biden administration, the Food and Drug Administration yesterday unveiled its highly anticipated proposal to require manufacturers to display nutrition information on the front of packaged foods. I wonder what's going to happen to that as well, the FDA, under HHS Secretary RFK Jr., is that right? And it's remarkable that state officials even have to consider steps like these. But New Jersey is going to build up a supply of medication used in abortions. The governor there, Phil Murphy, who's a Democrat, announced yesterday during state-of-the-state address as he both pledged to work with President-elect Donald Trump and warned that the state is ready to push back against the incoming administration. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, ordered flags at the Capitol to be raised to full staff for Trump's inauguration next week, temporarily overriding Biden's directive to keep flags at half staff for the 30-day mourning period honoring Jimmy Carter, which is the tradition after a president dies, but not for Trump. No, he needs those flags back up. The Biden administration moved to remove Cuba from the U.S. list of state sponsors of terrorism. I'm guessing Trump will put it right back on. Trump announced plans to create an external revenue service to collect tariffs and other forms of revenue that come from foreign sources. That sounds like a fantastic idea. MSNBC said its president, Rashida Jones, was stepping down after 4 years, and Rachel Maddow announced that for Trump's first 100 days, she would be back to her regular nightly schedule. So all of you Maddow fans out there will be happy about that. For the first time, the EPA has warned that forever chemicals present in sewage sludge that is used as fertilizer that can pose a human health crisis. I think the incoming Trump administration wants more forever chemicals in our lives. We'll see about that. Tens of millions of Hindus in India are convening what is expected to be the world's largest human gathering. I think I mentioned that the other day. And I think, I don't know if this is good news, but if you're a fan of the royal family, the Princess of Wales, Catherine, confirmed that she was in remission from cancer. So I guess that's good news, right? It's always nice to hear. Those are your headlines for today that I've gathered. What did I miss? Let me know. standupwithpete@gmail.com. Now I have got your clips coming up here, but I do just want to mention about the Pete Hegseth confirmation hearings yesterday. I was just paying close attention, in and out, I should say, yesterday to Hegseth. I watched most of the Democrats question him, thought they did overwhelmingly a great job. No one better than, in my opinion, Tim Kaine, who took it really to him about his controversial and scandalous past sex life and affairs. But for me, I was just shocked that this man was even sitting there in front of us. Obviously, wildly unqualified for the job, just in terms of the things he's established in his career. I think one Democrat on the Senate said, I think you'd be fine as and qualified as a spokesman for the Pentagon, but not to run the Pentagon. That being said, I don't think he's qualified to be anything. He shouldn't be anywhere near the federal government or in charge of anything that's in the public's interest. Obviously, this guy's a bad guy. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know what made Pete Hegseth the way that he is, but he has no business being in that chair or anywhere close to the levers of power. But here we are. If you're like me, you're just shocked that he's even being considered. But I did read an interesting article. Nick DiFabrizio sent this to me from The Bulwark, written by a guy named Jonathan Last, titled "Vice is a Moat. If Pete Hegseth is confirmed, it won't be in spite of his personal failings. It'll be because of them," he writes. It's a very good article, and in it, he includes the backgrounds of the last 9 secretaries of defense and says the job of Secretary of Defense is almost impossible to conceive in its immensity. You manage a workforce of 2.87 million employees, a budget of $842 billion. You're responsible for the longest and most complex logistics operation ever devised by man. You're tasked with handling today's national security challenges and looking over the horizon to plan for challenges that will appear years after you've left the job. You must have a fluid understanding of large organizations and bureaucracies. You must be a subject matter in either warfighting, technology, or international affairs. But it helps if you have mastery over one of those disciplines. And obviously, Pete Hegseth has nothing. He served in the National Guard. He briefly led a small failing nonprofit, and he helped host a weekend show on a cable news network. Looking at all of this, he writes, you're probably asking yourself, how is this guy getting a confirmation hearing at all, especially with his personal vices? But that's the key. Hegseth isn't getting a hearing in spite of his vices. He's getting this hearing because of them. And I thought that was great. He includes an observation from journalist Rebecca Traister, who responded how Senate Democrats are thinking about Hegseth's hearing. Some Democrats retain the one hope that they can persuade a Republican or two to actually defeat Hegseth's nomination. They worry that coming in a blaze will impede those efforts. Winning, said several staffers from offices less inclined to light Hegseth up, would mean not leaning in on the rape allegations and instead creating space to oppose him on grounds that Republicans can also oppose him on. Instead of giving Fox News the woke mob martyrdom its audience craves, they can highlight his financial mismanagement and lack of relevant experience. What an extraordinary observation, he writes. Democrats believe that bringing up Hegseth's many personal and moral failings would help. It would help his confirmation prospects because Republican senators would then feel as though they had to confirm him because Republican voters would rally around him in solidarity because of his vices. That's the thing that so many of us have a hard time understanding. He writes, in the Trumpified world of Republican politics, vice has become a moat. If a figure is a bad enough person, it inspires fanatic loyalty in Republican voters and helps protect them from challenges. It's a really good piece. I encourage you to read it all, but reading it helped me kind of understand exactly what is happening here. And finally, he writes, my theory is this. Republicans embrace vice not because they believe that the accused Republican figures are innocent, but because they believe they are guilty. And so these voters exist in the hope that their champion will go on to hurt their enemies on their behalf. After all, if a guy is willing to rape a woman, surely he can be counted on to visit destruction on Democrats or woke generals or whoever. I don't know. Maybe you have a better theory. I'd like you to discuss this phenomenon with me in the comments, is what he writes. So I highly recommend you check out that piece, Vices of Moat, at the Bulwark. And thanks, Nick, for sending it to me. It was helpful, if not still enraging, to read about that. I don't have clips from the hearing because I figured you'd probably heard or seen them all, and I didn't really want to replay them. And I can't really effectively cover the confirmation hearings, which there's going to be a whole bunch more starting today, the way that many of the big networks with producers cutting up and editing things can. So I'm going to get to a few other clips, and going back to that piece of legislation I mentioned that the House put on the floor right away, which is to bar transgender students from playing sports. Here is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on that. Time for your clips.
Here we are today, Republicans who have voted consistently against the Violence Against Women Act, who have taken away the right of all women to choose and have control over their own body, who, as women are bleeding out in parking lots across the country, standing there, allowing us to die, now want to pretend today that they care about women. And why? To open up gender and, yes, genital examinations into little girls in this country in the so-called name of attacking trans girls. And to that, today, what we have to say are two words: not today. The majority right now says there's no place in this bill that says it opens up for genital examinations. Well, here's the thing. There's no enforcement mechanism in this bill. And when there is no enforcement mechanism, you open the door to every enforcement mechanism.
By the way, that's AOC. I don't think this is going to get through the Senate, this bill, but the fact that they put it on the floor and pass it right away is the issue. Here's a little bit more from AOC, though.
Trans girls are girls. And for all the folks that are so concerned, thank you for your concern about women for the first time that I've seen. I don't know about y'all. I don't know who's been to gym class lately, but girls, even if you only believe in two genders, I've played co-ed sports all the time. But what this also opens the door for is for women to try to perform a very specific kind of femininity for the very kind of men who are drafting this bill, and to open up questioning of who is a woman because of how we look, how we present ourselves, and yes, what we choose to do with our bodies. I know who loves this bill. Yes, bigoted folks love this bill. Assaulters love this bill. But also, CEOs love this bill. Because Los Angeles is on fire right now. And this is the number one priority this majority has. Thank you, and I yield back.
All right. AOC doing good work yesterday on the House floor. That bill, like I said, was passed down partisan lines. So I don't think it's going anywhere in the Senate, but we'll follow it. And they're going to stay on that issue. Obviously, it's a winning issue for them. And now let's get to another clip that's really different. This is Bill Maher talking to Sam Harris about Elon Musk. They're all friends with him at one point, or friendly with him, apparently. Sam Harris was friends with him. Sam Harris is a polarizing figure on his own, but he is very anti-Trump and apparently very Elon Musk. And here he is telling the story as to why, which I think is super important.
He will, a Pizzagate lunatic, like literally one of the people who gave us Pizzagate. You know, I'm not going to name them because they would be happy to be named in this context, but it's a couple of guys who gave us Pizzagate. You know, you remember what Pizzagate was?
Of course. That Hillary Clinton was running a pedophile ring out of a pizza parlor
out of the
Washington,
basement
D.C.
of a pizza parlor that doesn't have a basement.
In their defense, the pizza was fantastic.
So, the people who gave us that are people who are in very good standing with Elon, who Elon will talk to them in Twitter Spaces and give them the mic and boost them and just high five them. And he knows, I've pointed out how crazy these people are to him. These people will send him a clip from my podcast or some other podcast, maybe this podcast, maybe we'll do it here, right? Making it seem like I've said the opposite of what I said in context. Like they sent him one where I seem to be saying that I didn't care about the chaos at the border, whereas I have exactly Elon's view of the border. And in context, you could hear that. But they'll send the opposite, and Elon will react to it. He doesn't have time to listen to the podcast, obviously, so he'll just react to the clip saying, Sam Harris is a total moron, right? Like it was something like that. But amplify this to millions of people. And I will email him and say, Elon, you're being gamed by right-wing trolls who gave us Pizzagate. This is not what I said in context, right? And he will tell me to go fuck myself. And he knows.
But he read the email.
Oh yeah, he will respond to the email. Go fuck yourself. He does not care if he's defaming someone in public who used to be a friend. So and this is why we're no longer friends. So he's. Listen, the guy is snorting ketamine and on Twitter all day long. I mean,
there you go. Wow, that's a pretty serious allegation for him to be levying. Why doesn't Elon Musk sue him for defamation? And I mean, serious. How does Sam Harris prove that? How does he prove that he's doing ketamine all day? Isn't that an important thing to be able to prove? I don't know. What the hell do I know about anything? Okay, let's go back to the House where Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, our queen, had a lot to say, as she often does, and I am here for all of it. And then got into an ugly dust-up with Nancy Mace, who asked her to step outside. Sounds like she challenged her to a fight, and many of us are a little bit sad it didn't happen. But here's Jasmine Crockett, the congresswoman from Texas.
So glad that we could finally end that nice little propaganda commercial break. Listen, I don't know what Ms. Mace was talking about. I thought we were talking about government efficiency. And the last time that I checked, this committee in the 118th, just like in the 119th, has been governed by the Republicans. Chairman, is it not true that you were the chairman in the 118th? You were. Okay. So the Republicans have controlled this committee. So my question is, why is it that you need to create an entirely new subcommittee when you literally could go through and do whatever work it is that you're talking about handing over to the gentle lady who has never seemingly brought up anything about efficiency? The only thing I recall from the 118th was her spending a lot of time on somebody's junk in this committee. So let me be clear. Y'all had a chance. You chose not to use it. So why should the American people be convinced that now all of a sudden, because you create a new committee that has been promulgated by a real oligarch, you're talking about Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. They were actually duly elected, not somebody sitting there buying Twitter and just happened to be the richest person in the world telling y'all what to do.
And there's more. Yeah, that was real good. Here now it gets, this is where it gets ugly. I don't know the chronology of this next clip from the last comments you just heard, but Nancy Mace was pissed. She wasn't having it. And Jasmine Crockett does not care. Here it is.
somebody's campaign coffers really are struggling right now. So she gonna keep saying trans so that people will feel threatened. And child, listen, I want y'all to tell me whether or
Do
not.
not call me a child. I am no child.
I want
Don't
to
even
find
start.
out
I am a grown
which
woman.
of those
I'm 47 years
emails
old. I have broken
actually
more
have
glass ceilings than
Chairman,
you
I am reclaiming my time.
You will not do that. I
Order.
am not a child.
I am reclaiming my time.
If you want to take it outside,
Mr. Chairman, the committee is not in order.
Order.
Point of order.
Order.
It is a weird thing to say, I am not a child, if you want to take it outside. She's saying, don't call me infantile or infantilize me or call me a child, but if you do, we're going to fight. Because, I don't know, I feel like that's what children do. It was almost perfect. It was just almost perfect. Anyway, all right. That's a thing that did happen yesterday. And now I want to go back to something we mentioned earlier about this external revenue service that Trump wants to create. The great Catherine Rampell, who covers economics for years, very, very smart. She was on CNN last night, and this is how she explained that.
Catherine.
So Donald Trump posted today that he wanted to create an external revenue service, similar to the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, to collect tariffs. I would hope that one of his aides would tell him what the C in CBP stands for. It stands for customs. We already have an agency, a 60,000 person agency that does this. Trump wants to create a new parallel agency, apparently that does the exact same thing, which tells you that DOJ has its work cut out for it.
You know, Trump likes a good name.
Yes, that's right, because the only thing he is good at is selling. And unfortunately, the product that you buy often doesn't come. It just doesn't show up. Or if it does show up, the product that you buy from anybody named Trump, it's broken. It doesn't work. It's half-assed. It will poison you, right? I mean, he could sell you anything. Not you, not me, but unfortunately, millions of American voters and more around the world. He is a salesman. He names things, and then he doesn't deliver them. Okay. Now, moving on. All right, well, the governor of California gave an interview to MSNBC last night, answered a bunch of questions, I think, with Jen Psaki. And he also called a special session of Congress in California so they can approve funding and get on message and do something to stop the mis and disinformation. Anyway, here is Gavin Newsom perfectly responding to Donald Trump's attacks.
This is serious. And, you know, I get it. They want to take us. I get it. I'm not naive. I get the California derangement syndrome. I've been living with that for years and years. New scum. You know, I'm the same 7th grade. I remember the guy on Baltimore Avenue that called me new scum. I was in 7th grade. I can handle that. We'll leave that aside. I understand what they're trying to do. I want to work with them. It's not about me. It's about people that we both represent. He represents and I represent, and I'm honored and proud to represent these folks.
There you go, Gavin Newsom last night, and he went on and sent this message.
Honored and proud to represent these folks, and I desperately plead with them. Come out here, help us, and we will help you. You'll be elevated, Mr. President. At the end of the day, you'll be the one we all will go to and say thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you for living up to the values of this country. Thank you for having the backs of these families and these kids. I met a kid the other day, literally was driving away. Their house was on fire in the Palisades, and the young daughter said, "Daddy, did you get my bunny?" And he said, "I didn't get your bunny. I got 4 kids." Mm-hmm. That's what I hope that President of the United States, President Trump, has an opportunity to meet with that family.
And a little bit more. Let me give you one more clip.
What's not, I think, helpful or beneficial is this string of consciousness, these wild-eyed fantasies that somehow the State Water Project, we have reservoirs that are at or near historic highs, full, completely full, that somehow there's a magical spigot in California, in Northern California, that just can be turned on, and all of a sudden there will be rain or water flowing everywhere. It's not helpful. It's damaging to the very foundation of the notion of what are facts, what are truths. And the fact of that asymmetry, that's profound and consequential, amplified by people like, let's be candid, Elon Musk and others. And that 1-2 punch is real. And it's not just about this fire. And that's where here occurred force winds of mis and disinformation that can divide a country on a myriad of issues. This is serious.
Yes, indeed it is, but we're going to end on some laughs, some jokes about something very serious. Jordan Klepper and The Daily Show take on Pete Hegseth's very bad or very good day, depending on how you see it, or if you're Republican or Democrat, because there's a real disparity in the questions that we heard from them. Take it away, Jordan Klepper.
Pete Hegseth, Trump's nominee for defense secretary and dude who makes sure everyone at the frat house has their stories straight. Now, since he was nominated a couple months ago, we found out a lot about Hegseth, and most of it does not inspire confidence. He's been accused of sexual assault, he was accused of nearly running a veterans group into the ground, and he has a documented history of excessive drinking, which we learned even more about today.
A Hegseth acquaintance describes a breakfast they had with Hegseth in the spring of 2023. We met at Fox News in New York for breakfast, and he suggested we go across the street to a bar. It was like 10 in the morning. Then he ordered 2 gin and tonics at the same time for himself. Then he had a 3rd gin and tonic.
Whoa! Whoa! Whoa, Hegseth is rolling up to breakfast like, I'll have the steel-cut oatmeal and 3 gin and tonics, please. You know what they say, beer before liquor, never been sicker. Liquor before liquor, I'll have another liquor. This definitely raises some questions for the person you may want to put in charge of the nukes. So, let's jump into today's confirmation hearing. And you know what, I'm not saying he showed up drunk, but it did start at 10 a.m. So how about we start with a quick sobriety test? You know, something simple. Pete, how about name your kids?
Our 7 wonderful kids, Gunnar, Jackson, Peter Boone, Kensington, Luke, Rex. Sorry, it's a lot of them. And Gwendolyn.
Okay. Little tipsy, okay. Big deal. All right, no biggie. My dad was always mixing up me and my siblings' names, and he launched perfectly successful counteroffensive rapid deployment amphibious incursions into Iran all the time. Although Pete probably should have given his kids names he could remember more easily. Maybe like Don Julio, Jim Beam, Johnny Walker, Jose Cuervo, and don't forget little Michael Hard Lemonade. Anyway, now that that's over, it's time for the grilling. Republicans, I know he's your guy, but I also know you love the military, so I'm sure you've got some hard questions for the man who wants to run it.
Why do you want to do this job? What drives you? Tell me something about your wife that you love. How many push-ups can you do?
Follow-up question, sir. I have this jar. Could a big, strong man like yourself open it? Okay. But Democrats made up for those softballs with a couple pitches that were really high and inside.
I assume that in each of your weddings, you've pledged to be faithful to your wife. You've taken an oath to do that, haven't you? You've admitted that you had sex at that hotel in October 2017, and you were still married and you just had a child by another woman. Again, how do you explain your judgment? You have admitted that you had sex while you were married to wife 2 after you just had fathered a child by wife 3. But you didn't reveal any of this to President Trump. Why didn't you inform the commander-in-chief and the transition team of this very relevant event?
Oh, damn! Tim Kaine went full Maury Povich out there, huh? Wow. Tim Povich. Although, come on, Tim, come on. You're asking why didn't Hegseth tell Trump about how many times he cheated on his wife? Maybe because if he did, Trump would high-five him so hard it would break both their hands. Okay, that was a pretty wild line of questioning from Tim Kaine. Any Republican want to jump to his defense here?
How many senators have showed up drunk to vote at night? And then how many senators do you know have got a divorce before cheating on their wives? Did you ask them to step down? No. But it's a show. You guys make sure you make a big show and point out the hypocrisy because a man's made a mistake. And you want to sit there and say that he's not qualified? Give me a joke.
Give me a joke. Okay. a priest, a rabbi, and Pete Hegseth walk into a bar at 10 a.m. Are you happy now, Mark Wayne? Huh? Well, I don't know if this was really the defense that Hegseth wanted, though. Look, we're all pieces of shit here. Let he without an Ashley Madison premium account cast the first stone.
Yeah, there you go. Jordan Clapper in The Daily Show. So good. I love that. I wanted to play all of it for you. But I want to get to my friend Ron Gonzalez out in Southern California. I don't have his exact location. I forgot to ask her. I know, and I forget it, of course. But Ron was great. I was real happy that he agreed to talk to me. He had reached out to me when the fires had first started. We've been talking for years. Met Ron. He's a great guy. And I thought, let's just tape this conversation, the things that you've been saying to me, and share it with our wider audience and wider community. He was great at the Hangout on Monday, informing us and sharing with us his experience. So here it is. Ron Gonzalez, longtime listener. I'm not going to necessarily plug anything. He didn't ask me to, but I know it'll make him feel good to have shared what he knows, his personal story, with you guys. It certainly did help me understand a lot. Okay, I've got Ronnie on the phone right now. Hey, man, thank you very much for letting me tape this conversation. You've been a really valuable member of our community and huge supporter of mine for a long time, and I thought it would be great just to check in with you, as I have been off the air, on the air. So thanks for doing this.
No problem.
Tell me just a little bit about your history, because you were born and raised in California. You're no stranger to wildfires. This is not new, but this is obviously different.
Yeah. So I'm almost 50 years old. I'm 48 years old, born and raised in Southern California, in the Tarzana hospital, and I grew up in the San Fernando Valley during the 70s and 80s, and then I've bounced around the community, so I know how SoCal used to look and how SoCal looks today.
You have a really great perspective because you're a 50-year-old man who's lived and spent a lot of time in all different parts of SoCal.
Yes.
What is your experience with fires growing up or now?
Growing up, they were there. They were out in the remote areas. And honestly, they were always made me sad for the animals and for the wildlife.
Right.
But thinking about how they would come into an urban area, it almost seemed unreal. And I always saw firefighters in the area contain them as soon as they came up to the city limits. I did see Oakland as a kid in 1989, I think, and that blew me away because that was the first time I seen a wildfire actually take out an urban area. But other than that, until 2000, late 2000 aughts, I didn't see anything like this.
And not too long ago, you and your wife bought a beautiful home for your family there. And I remember when you bought it, you told me something about it had to be built a certain way with fire-resistant materials and so on. So it's a different perspective when you're a homeowner. We've heard from so many people who have lost their homes, but it's a different perspective when you're a homeowner and when you're a father, when you have to, you're worried, you're thinking about your kids and you've got to have these conversations with them and get to-go bags and all of that. How have you been doing emotionally? Because you told me a couple times, like, this is hard.
This is very hard. I had a choice to move during the pandemic because I was running out of space in my house in Pasadena, which is about a mile and a half from the front lines of the fires of Altadena. Altadena and Pasadena are basically sister cities. Mm-hmm. One is unincorporated part of LA. One is its own city, Pasadena, Rose Parade, Rose Bowl, all that stuff. I love Pasadena. It was a great town. It got very expensive. And Altadena was a little bit less priced, but people were moving in there very quickly. And I had an opportunity to buy a house about 30 miles away in Santa Clarita. And I did that during the pandemic. I was worried about buying the house in Santa Clarita because of the fire danger. Ironically, sadly, the other house I was looking at was in Altadena, and it was burnt down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that happened in I never would have thought that. The more risky thing was to move to the house I'm at now, and God forbid anything happens to my family over the next time, but we're ready. We have our stuff laid out in a hallway I'm looking at right now. But I was going to move to Pasadena or Altadena, which was basically a mile and a half away, in a beautiful area near Christmas Tree Lane.
How have your kids dealt with this, and how are you dealing with it as a parent? Are they scared?
They're scared. They're quiet. My kids have different personalities. A 15-year-old, he just turned 15 on Sunday, and we were going to go to Universal Studios for his 15th day. We all love that. It's our place we go to for family celebrations. And he didn't want to go because of the Sunset Fire that was just about 2 miles away. And the kids are nervous. We had to ask them, what is your most precious possessions? Lay them out here. Lay out your clothes. And that's been stressful. There was a fire that broke out last week during all the fire spreading, and they saw fire come into the neighborhood. Luckily, that fire was turned out. But I can't imagine going through the pandemic and now going through this.
You work for a utility company, which has led you in the last couple of days or since these fires started to actually be out and seeing it all. So tell us a little bit about what you do, what you're doing, and then the devastation that you've seen. It seems like we don't have really good words to describe it, so good luck.
Okay. I will describe it as this. I'm driving out in the middle of the morning. It's dark. I don't know what to expect. I'm driving down Canaan, going into Pepperdine to where my utilities are set up, and you can smell the fire. You can see the orange in the sky, and then suddenly the winds kick in the morning, and then it gets clear, and it's cold as hell, and it's blowing 80 miles an hour. And you can see guys who've been working 24 hours, they got probably 12-hour shifts, but they're exhausted. They had to come from every part of the state and et cetera. And everybody is determined to help. And so I'm setting up my logistics station to make sure things that are really important, like hand warmers, gloves, hard hats, boots, materials is all set up for them. That's my job. Make sure everybody's set up, and then they're going out to make sure that they can make sure that the utility system's safe and that it can be restored for the homes that are still remaining, so people can go into the homes that weren't burnt down. But we have to assess what was burnt down and how to handle those situations. So we drive through those areas. And it looks like a war zone. Things are still smoking from the ground. Homes that were cantilevered over the ocean, and there's nothing but steel girders and an ocean. And Porsches and fancy cars sitting on PCH, just in total, like, great disaster. And then you're seeing tanks and National Guardsmen, police officers, sheriffs, firefighters, newscasters set up around Will Rogers State Beach, places where people used to roller skate, or where I roller skated and ride bikes. You start there, volleyball courts. There got 10 or 12 volleyball courts on the sand that are very famous. The nets are cooked and some of the poles are pushed over. It's apocalyptic. It looks like the Terminator 2.
Wow, you did a good job, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. And then, I don't mean to interrupt, but I can't help but be worried about pets and animals, and they're still pulling out people there. We can't restore until they do the search and rescue, and you can see that happening, and that's very eerie. I've never ever experienced that.
Thanks to you, I saw that Jimmy Kimmel's piece last night. The producers put together all the good that people are doing. Look for the helpers. You're one of the helpers. Yes. You're seeing helpers out there. Tell me about the kind of the beauty of humanity that comes out in these horrors, and what it feels like to have strangers just looking at each other in the eye, sometimes hugging each other, and certainly working together to try to do good things for others.
I can tell you that as an Angelino and as a Californian, all of us just are looking at those areas being selfless. We're sad for ourselves. And I'm sad for where my Altadena heritage is, but we want to take care of the people. And that's been so important. And these donation centers, these charities, these creative ways, the celebrities, whether it's Snoop Dogg or whatever, to just bring the community together has been really important. And I'm really hoping that all of us as Americans can come together and support this community, because we are just as much in love with a country as anybody else is, if not more. And we're hurting right now. We're hurting. It's going to be a long time for us to rebuild, and it will never look the same. These communities are old. There's homes that were historic and we're built with materials, they won't be built the same. And some of the people might be moved out. Like I said, there might be gentrification in certain areas, and I really fear that.
Are you hearing, and are you yourself doing any finger pointing, any blame, anger towards any one entity or another?
Yeah, I am. I'm blaming climate change. I'm blaming us not taking things seriously when suddenly we've had the dry. We went from going the three most rainiest years, and then we were in a flood, and all of a sudden our reservoirs are full. We grow all this vegetation, all this fuel, and then La Nina or El Nino, La Nina sets in. Things get dry, and really dry. I live right next to it, and suddenly we've had the driest year or the start of winter on record, and the highest winds on record. And it's not a coincidence. And now we're going into wintertime, which this used to be a fall experience. Wintertime into the middle of these fire storms, I want to call them. They're storms.
Yeah.
And then I have my kids here, and they have to hear, my family's hearing the winds howl at 100 miles an hour. And yeah, sure, you can blame me for living here, but it wasn't like this. And they're going right now, and it scares us. So I think it's, things aren't the same. I've been here half a century, and it's different.
What's it like to hear the blame being, the misinformation and the disinformation? And even more, I think the thing that most people are so unbelievably outraged by is Republicans now demanding that, blaming the victim, it would seem, and then saying they're going to withhold aid if you don't change what you're doing.
I'm afraid, honestly, because we're working hard to be part of the American experience and the tax pool of people, and we're putting our fair share in. And I would never think twice of helping anybody who's experienced a flood or an ice storm or a hurricane, or even if it wasn't in our own country, we help out. And all of a sudden, they're going to hold us hostage to picking the right political people is disgusting.
What would you say to one of them if you could? That would make
I would say you're disgusting. I would say you're disgusting, and that you're an American, because Americans help each other out.
I love that. I hope you get the opportunity. Ron, thanks so much for talking to me and keeping me and so many others connected to it. We got a lot of friends out there in Southern California, and we really appreciate you making it real and keeping us connected, and we'll be here for you, buddy.
I'll keep doing it. Keep doing it, and I love you guys, and we're all a great community, and thank you guys for all your support.
Thanks, bud.
All right.
And there you go. Ron Gonzalez out there in California. Awesome guy. Really great friend that he has become to me and to others out there, and I look forward to meeting him and his family, and hopefully even breaking bread in that beautiful home of his, breaking his bread and his balls, because that's the kind of guy I am. Ron Gonzalez, awesome. So great. Okay, now let's get to my conversation with our headliner. It's Celeste Headlee, who we absolutely love to talk to. She is really one of the best guests for so many reasons. She can talk about so many things. She can recall quotes and poems, and she does that in today's conversation. She's a journalist, author, speaker. She's a musician. She is a multi-talented, award-winning 20-year career in public radio. She was the co-host of NPR's The Takeaway and correspondent for Day to Day. She's the host of a weekly show on Detroit Public Radio. She's the author of a whole bunch of 4 really very important books, and all very different books, that all of which you should go buy and own. That's what I really want you to do today. We need to talk. How to have conversations that matter. Do nothing. How to break away from overworking, overdoing, and underliving, which I think is her best-selling book. Speaking of race, why everybody needs to talk about racism and how to do it. Go buy them all. Support Celeste on all the social media platforms and anywhere else. All linked in the show notes. Here we go.
Headlee, Celeste, it's so great to see you. I'm so happy to see you. Thank you very much for joining me here at this time of year and in the world that we're in. It's really important to talk to you. Thank you.
Back at you, Dominic, Pete.
Is that your real full name and all that? Is that your stage name, Headlee?
It is. That's my real name, and I've always kept it. Yeah.
Do you have a middle name that you would share or no?
Oh, my middle name is Anne, Celeste Anne Headlee.
That's great. It's a great name.
Nobody says unless I'm in big trouble.
I'm guessing that you are a very easy person to Google, which is mostly good, but maybe bad, right? Like is there any other Celeste Headlees?
I don't think, not that I know of. Yeah. Celestes are few and far between. And then Headlee is not a rare name per se, but a lot of people spell it Ley, and mine is Lee.
There you go. You're right. Exactly. The spelling of it all. Yeah. Your whole background is very mixed. You come from all kinds of parts of the world, right? We've talked about that before.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. If you look at I actually did a DNA test because I'm writing a book about my family history. So I ended up having to run DNA, something I'm inherently skeptical. And my map includes a lot of West Africa, North Africa, Portugal, and then Eastern Europe, the Jewish side of my family, a little bit of Ireland, Scotland.
I didn't know that maybe I knew it. Speaking of listening, but I didn't know you were working on that book. Why? Why that? You've written 4 other amazing books, all very different from each other in terms of the subject matter, for sure. Why this?
So this is actually about my great-grandmother who was born on a slave plantation in Georgia, got her teaching degree at Atlanta University not long after Atlanta University was founded, got married, moved to Mississippi. She taught in Alabama in what is now Alabama A&M. Then she moved to Mississippi and her husband was murdered by the KKK. And she fled to Little Rock, Arkansas. And Arkansas was seen as the Eden for African Americans at the time. And tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of African Americans moved to Arkansas after the Civil War. Obviously, it didn't remain that, but
it didn't remain Eden.
It did not remain.
What do you even mean? Like, can you describe like it was just a safe and thriving atmosphere for Black folks? When you mean
the first governor of Arkansas was a young state after the Civil War. It seceded, but it was literally the western border of Arkansas was Indian territory. It was literally the frontier. It was not developed. It had a very small population. So in fact, the first governor of Arkansas after the Civil War was a former Union general, and they were selling plots of land to Black farmers. They wanted Black farmers there because Black farmers were among the most skilled farmers in the entire United States at that point. And so they wanted them to come there and develop the land. And so a good percentage of Blacks who lived in Arkansas owned land during Reconstruction. Obviously, that all came crashing down. But for a while there, it was a good place for African Americans. But in any case, my great-grandmother went there. She ended up being she and Ida B. Wells were considered the 2 strongest anti-lynching advocates in the South.
Wow.
She was the first Madam C.J. Walker medal winner from the NAACP.
Wow.
She raised the money to open the first library for Blacks in Arkansas. She was and of course gave birth to the child who became the Dean of African American Composers. So she was just an incredible individual who, of course, was a Black woman, and her history hasn't been entirely forgotten. So
hence why you're writing it. That is the best reason as to why to write a family history. That is fascinating, tragic, triumphant, and really important to write those types of stories. So I'm excited to read it. I can't wait.
I hope it encourages other people to dig into their family history, especially people of color, because that history has been purposely erased. And it would be great to reclaim all these wonderful.
I've tried. I'm not that interested in my family history, and it's because it doesn't seem that interesting. Of course it's interesting, but it hasn't been kept very well. And so what I find that a lot of people do, what I feel like my family has done, which is embellish things that are just really not true. Like, my dad's fond of saying, and there's like a grain of truth to it, but that like our Sicilian ancestors, his mother's parents came from Sicily and immigrated to America, but they used to own a castle in Sicily. And I'm like, nah. And he's like, what do you mean, nah? I'm like, people don't leave places where they own castles. That's why. I think they lived in a town where there was a
castle,
and they were probably servants in it. But somehow, when you leave your country, you get to rewrite your history.
I own that shit.
Yeah, right. So
that was mine.
Let's go see our castle in Sicily. Let's go see if they'll let us in. Oh yeah, we know the Dominics. They used to fucking mop the floors here. Now get out, stupid. Sorry, Dad. Anyway, I want to ask you I want to make a hard turn because you are a journalist, but you're also an author. You're a very thoughtful, interesting person. You care a lot about science and scientific consensus, but you're also a spiritual person who thinks a lot about philosophy and psychology. How am I doing? History.
I think that's a generous description, but yeah, it sounds familiar.
And also you think a lot about history. You think a lot about race and gender, and you've written all about it. So I guess you're like one of the main people I want to ask, like, how are you personally, given all that, navigating the anticipatory anxiety is the phrase I hear a lot and I'm using of January 20th, Trump and all that may be, in addition to all of the other things that are like these wildfires. I'm sure lots of people out there and have covered it over the years in some way. So like before I hit record, I said something like, how are you? And you said resigned. And I really wanted to unpack that. I figured it's connected to what I'm asking you about.
Yeah, okay. So I was born in LA. That's where I spent the formative years of my life until I left for college. So it not only breaks my heart to see people lose their entire homes. I think most of us can, if we spend just 20 seconds thinking about what that would be like to drive into your driveway and park your car and find nothing, right? Just leveled, gone, everything gone. I think most of us can understand how that would feel. But what just makes what makes it worse is turning this into a political
I've been saying it this
leverage.
Way. I've been saying exactly what it's so deeply, profoundly upsetting, the whole thing. But what's enraging is the lies about it.
I know.
And so the lies about what caused it, specifically those lies have to do with what could have been prevented it, like if only you just raked the forests. And the more enraging one is that every bad thing that happens in the world is as a result of women or black people, or even worse, black women being in charge of the plane, the organization, the company, the fire station. The DEI argument that's being made by mainstream, most influential people like Elon Musk and others is so hard to see, because those women that are running that fire station in California are as good as anybody just because they're there, I would imagine. I'm just guessing.
I posted this on, I think, LinkedIn as well. But the fact that they're all ridiculous arguments. They're just completely not fact-based, evidence-based, whatever. But it reminded me, when all these people were making these arguments, it reminded me of this just mind-blowing speech that Toni Morrison gave at Portland State University in 1975. And I went back and re-listened to it. I have listened to that speech probably 5 or 6 times.
I'll try to, I'm writing it down. I'll try to include it maybe at the end of our interview, but yeah.
Like literally you have to stop at some moments, because every word is just making explosions like pop rocks in your brain.
Wow.
But she said the very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over again your reason for being. Somebody says you have no language and you spend 20 years proving that you do. Somebody says your head isn't shaped properly, so you have scientists working on the fact that it is. Somebody says you have no art, so you dredge that up. Somebody says you have no kingdom, so you dredge that up. None of this is necessary. There will always be one more thing. And she said, and I urge you to be careful, for there is a deadly prison, the prison that is erected when one spends one's life fighting phantoms, concentrating on myths, and explaining over and over to the conqueror your language, your lifestyle, your history, your habits.
Whew.
Yeah. And this is where we are.
I've never had to do that.
Yeah. And I have not spent a single minute countering, arguing, or proving incorrect all of these stupid lies. I will not post something listing the entire just incredible qualifications and history of the chief of fire in Los Angeles, because that is a distraction, and I'm not going to let it work. The more that we allow that to distract us, the more people will do it again and again.
Yeah.
I will not. But you say that I'm resigned. Part of that resignation is like just that. If you can just imagine just putting your head down and moving forward, and I will not be distracted. I'm resigned to the work I need to do. And you do your thing. and I'm just going to keep moving.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's a really important way to look at it, I think, for most of us that are doing any kind of work that's trying to make the world a better place, much less inform people, and not get distracted by the weapons of mass distraction that are many of our current leaders, and obviously our media today, which you and I know all about how that works. And let me just ask you a little bit more about the fires in terms of how it is being talked about or covered, or any of the arguments that could be made. I mean, I guess this probably falls into something you don't want to defend, but it's not necessarily about DEI. It's this idea that you're hearing now, mainstream Republicans in Congress, I've heard them in the House, I've heard them in the Senate now in just the last 2 days, say, this is the talking point, unless California changes their policies, the federal government shouldn't have to give them money for their disasters that I guess they're saying could have been prevented. If you look at the research on this, obviously we can talk about climate, we can talk about the human species and density and how homes are built and so on. But when you look at fire science and fire ecologists, what little I've read is very hard to prevent this. And when you look and learn a little bit about water pressure, very hard to keep that water pressure up and in elevated areas and so on. What little I've read about it, there's a lot of nuance in what causes this. But when you see that kind of thing being said, we're not going to give liberals federal money, which is crazy because, of course, liberal states fund the federal government much more than
California in particular. And California, out of 50 states, California is number 49 in terms of taking money from the federal government. So that is insane for any politician to be saying, we're not going to be giving to California any of the money they put into the government, especially when the states that are the most dependent, that are the most expensive, are the reddest states, the ones that are constantly trying to decry the social safety net and say horrible things about so-called welfare queens, which is a racist dog whistle. So yeah, on an economic base, it's ludicrous, but it's more than, okay, this is not how human kindness works.
But it's also not economically fair because of what you just said. Like, California is funding most of, let's say, FEMA or anything.
And Alabama. California is funding the states where these representatives represent.
Right. And to look at that way, it's just, I hope we hear more.
How dare you? How dare you give that money to West Virginia?
Yeah.
Which they absolutely should. People in need. But how dare you give that money without complaint to West Virginia and then claim that you're not going to give it to California? That is ridiculous. But here's the other thing. Scientists will tell you, behavioral scientists will tell you, sociologists, that human beings are mostly kind. And that is true. But we are only kind on a micro level. When you take human beings and start getting to the principle, so-called principle of the thing, when you start talking about things in moral tones and philosophy, like you'll read a lot of all of the, no offense, white guys with a microphone, and they're always talking about these big concepts and blah, 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 blah. And that's when people are the cruelest.
Sure.
Think of it in terms of the way we punish crime, right? We have a special level of punishment for people who harm others on a one-to-one basis. And once you may even do way more damage if you're in Wall Street and just defrauding people. But because it's removed, we don't see that as bad of a thing. It's the same thing for human kindness. If you see all these videos of people running in to save animals and save other people and help people get out, right? None of them stopped and asked what political party they belong to. And believe me, there are a lot of freaking Republicans in California.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of them. But then you'll get onto the political stage, and as soon as it becomes a principle, then people are willing to agree, oh, yeah, we should not give money to them unless they agree that immigrants suck.
People are kind on a one-to-one, you said micro, one-to-one basis. When you know somebody, I have no problem with black people, not a racist bone in my body. I work with a black guy. We're very friends, good friends. Well, what do you think about the Voting Rights Act? I'm against it.
like meaning the policies, or at a wider level, at a broader level, I don't support the things that will help. Let's take race out of it on socioeconomics, people living around the poverty line. I don't support that, but I do give money to this family specifically, or to my church, because I know them. I see them. I see the pain. I see the triumph. One might argue that's why you do it, because you literally get to see the positive outcome of your action or donation. And we don't get to see that necessarily when we vote for policies that affect the vast majority of people in that situation.
And also, one might also argue that this is the way forward, right? Stop talking about things in terms of demographics and people, some people, and talk about it one-on-one, right? It's the cliche, all politics is personal. But really, it's not just politics. Homo sapiens is personal. This is how we encounter the world. This is how we become better people, is one by one. And going back to the whole thing of how I'm getting through, I don't know how you're getting through. I don't know how you're preparing your mind and body for what's coming. But I cannot say enough about people learning the principles and making self-compassion a discipline, because this is the only way you will survive. Westerners tend to think of compassion only in terms of feeling compassion for others, right? But in the Eastern world, especially in countries that are largely Buddhist, compassion has always been thought of as self first, because it has been totally understood that you cannot feel true compassion for others unless you have compassion for yourself. But there's another thing about self-compassion. Self-compassion has three components to it, right? There's mindfulness, a non-judgmental awareness of what's going on and what it is that you're feeling. There's kindness. So if you drop your cell phone and you break the screen yet again, you're not sitting there saying, I'm the worst person in the world. You're speaking to yourself with the same kindness which you'd speak to one of your friends. And then there's a connection to humanity. So that same person, if you've dropped your cell phone and you've said, okay, yeah, you screwed up, this is going to be expensive, you then say, this happens to everybody. And that's what we need in this world, is understanding that we are part of a human race where everyone is fallible. For example, almost everyone believes in at least one conspiracy theory. Almost everyone. And maybe there are actually quizzes online that can help you identify the conspiracy theory that you believe in. I don't recommend it if you are faint of heart. But the self-compassion of being honest, non-judgmental when we've screwed up, being kind to yourself, and then understanding that in your errors and your flaws, that is part of what connects you to the rest of humankind.
You are singing my song. It's particularly resonant with me because I just had I had some adversity this morning. And so it's particularly resonant with me the way that you're. Yeah, but it's just like I was beating myself up a good bit. And that was really helpful to me and allows me to be reminded about that, because I'm only just now understanding compassion and self-compassion. It's not a thing that men even like to think about, much less talk about. I'm not afraid to talk about my feelings, never have been my entire life, but I do fall into that category from time to time, certainly ego and some of the traditional masculinity things and all of it. But what I've been saying to further this conversation, to be more specific, is along the lines, I think, of compassion, is what I've been trying to identify is that bad things are going to happen. And when Donald Trump comes back, he floods the zone with shit. And every day he says crazy things. He's already started. He's not even president. And in the past, I've gotten very upset by it. And I've also taken it out on my kids, on myself, on my partner, on my friends, on my parents, on myself. He takes my heart and he holds on to it. He takes my bandwidth, my emotions. He owns me. And Trump derangement syndrome is a real thing. It is a real thing. And it's a good thing because it means you're a good person, because you're upset about upsetting things. However, you know what I'm saying. We can't allow for that. We cannot allow for something that this person, or any person really does, but certainly this person who's ever present now again, does or says, to affect the moment I'm having with my child, with myself, with my pet. Like, that's hard to do. I think that's hard to do, but I want to have a special awareness about that. Insights?
Yeah. So always the cure for what ails you, if you're Homo sapiens, is to open up and look out instead of hunker down and look within. Always. The things that are most successful at healing anxiety and even sadness within a human being are things like a walk in nature, a talk with a friend. There are always things where we're looking out, the helper's high, doing something kind for somebody every day. Even if it's just like, I'm going to buy the person's coffee who's standing behind me, small things. Even if it's just like, I'm going to walk my neighbor's dog and it costs you nothing. Those things where you're opening out, which is the last thing we want to do, right? When we're hurt, is the last thing we want to do is open up further. We think it makes us more vulnerable, but here's the thing. You talked about masculinity, and this is coming within the environment in which we have Mark Zuckerberg saying he wanted to, what did he say? He wants to up the masculine. I forget what he said.
That this morning. I need to pay a little closer attention. I'm being serious because I want to know everything that guy is thinking and saying for a lot of.
They need a more masculine energy at Facebook or something, which.
By the way, no offense. I've been saying this new makeover he's got, he's a beautiful girl, in my opinion. I'm just saying. I think that's the truth. So it's just ironic that he's calling for more masculinity when he looks so pretty now.
So here's the thing, though. The most brittle people, the men who look the most weak and pathetic in my eyes, are these men who think of themselves as alpha males. Like, they are brittle. They are fragile to me. That is somebody whose feelings can be hurt and they can explode into anger or whatever at the drop of a pin. We were talking about compassion. Compassion increases your resilience. You want to talk about a badass practice? It's compassion. That is not weak or soft in any way, shape, or form. It is bad ass.
Yeah,
and it requires strength.
I think that's right on. But I suffer from some of that, and not everybody knows it. People who know me really well spend a lot of time with it. They've seen it, and
suffer from
that kind of typical masculine rage. It's not like that overt. There's a scale. You're talking about the more overt guys who are just, we know who you're talking about. That more kind of, I don't fall in that, but just because I don't signal it, but the way that I walk and talk and carry myself all the time doesn't mean it's not in there. It is in there. It's a part of me, and I think about it and I address it. And I have been paying a lot of attention to the eulogies of Jimmy Carter because I actually think that he might be the picture of strength. Like, I don't know what you think, but like, I think Kamala Harris or somebody said that there is strength in decency and compassion. And I was like, yes, that should be the definition of strength. Being decent, being compassionate, being altruistic, doing good things for people and nobody's watching. That to me would be a great being vulnerable. Those are a definition of strength that we don't have. I'd like to try to participate in reinventing for myself and others. But do you think that Jimmy Carter is someone like that, or there's some other simple?
Oh, yeah. Think how hard it is to do the right thing in a moment. To put someone else's needs above your own is really fucking hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so difficult.
I won't do it.
That requires real strength. Look at Jimmy Carter and all that was said about him and the things that Reagan said about him.
Yeah.
And yet, who had the better impact on the world around them? I remember interviewing President Carter. One of the times I interviewed him was not long after he wrote his book on Palestine. This was quite some time, maybe 2010. And he was called an anti-Semite. Horrible things were said about him because he felt that Palestinians deserved civil rights and deserved their own homeland. Horrible things were said about him. He never once compare that with these CEOs who are having right-wingers complain about DEI programs in their shareholder meeting, and so they completely back away from DEI programs. Compare those two things, those two actions. Jimmy Carter saying, I don't care what you say about me. This is the truth, and the truth is the truth, as opposed to CEOs going, oh, right, this is making people mad, so we're not going to go for equity anymore. No more fairness here.
It's
really harder. It's harder to be Jimmy Carter than it was to be Ronald Reagan.
Yes. And also, just along these lines in this conversation, there is an attraction for people to support, quote, strong men who project, quote, strength, to intimidate other nations, to intimidate companies that they're negotiating with, to intimidate individuals. That Trump is a classic, quote, strongman. I hate the term because, like you said, I feel like these guys are the weakest, but it's the term that we use, and people like Orban and obviously those of the past, but there is a real attraction to that type of, quote, strength. And it's dangerous because the Jimmy Carter type of strength or different kinds of diplomacy or deal making are often, I would argue, most of the time, way more effective doing things behind the scenes. You don't need to intimidate and call someone a name to get a huge deal done. You can do it in far better ways.
Yeah, if you think about this in psychological terms, we know that narcissistic qualities, and the clinical definition of narcissism, a lot of people think that means like arrogance. It doesn't. Narcissism is a blend of insecurity and grandiosity, right? This blend of I'm so insecure that I'm going to overblow how much I think of myself and center my entire world around me. We know that narcissistic tendencies actually predicts your approval of right-wing authoritarianism and social dominance, right? Social dominance being, I'm a bully. Everything's about me. I'm going to bully my way in. And you look at somebody like Elon Musk, who, I'm sorry, is not smart. People need to stop saying he's smart because he's not. But he also is desperately unhappy. Like, this is a miserable man. Somebody who's going to go onto social media and use a voice modulator to pretend to be somebody else to say, no, I think Elon's a totally nice guy. By the way, Trump used to do the exact same thing.
I just read about that he did that. I just read the reporting on that. It's pretty conclusive, right? And Trump did the exact same thing by pretending to be his PR guy. And I don't, by the way, know anybody who's done that. It's a very exceptional, it's a very bold and insidious, like, what's the word? It's a bizarre thing to do.
And it's like, this is not somebody who is well. Sometimes it helps people to understand these personalities by thinking about what they would have been like in high school.
Yeah, for sure.
I want you to imagine a high school friend who called up a radio program going, I think Celeste Headlee is the prettiest, nicest girl in the whole high school. And if you heard me saying that about myself, you'd be like, okay.
You're not even good at doing the bit.
I know.
That's how bad you are at it. I think, what are you, a Simpsons character apparently? The lesson sitting at home going, which voice will I do? I'll do this voice.
Just this one. That's the only one I got.
Believe it's a real person. You're not even doing an impersonation of a human. You're like doing like okay. But by the way, I should mention my band Insecurity and Grandiosity is opening for Social Dominance this weekend at big venue in Utica.
We all know what Elon Musk would have been like in high school. We know what Donald Trump would have been like in high school.
Oh, we do. We know exactly how they were in high school. I just saw some guy, I don't know if it's true, talking about what Mark Zuckerberg was like in high school. I don't know if it's true, but it's pretty funny.
And you know what we would have thought of them.
Yeah.
So if that helps you to really see these men and how sad, miserable, honestly pathetic. It's pathetic. And we just got that news that 70,000 German men were part of that group that shared practical strategies for raping women, and 70,000.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm looking it up.
So what was it called?
Rape chat groups with up to 70,000 members uncovered. Thousands of men are participating in chat groups in which they share suggestions on how to rape and sexually assault women. A German investigation,
including their own mothers, I might add.
Okay, I'm gonna vomit. There should have been. Rarely do I want a trigger alert, but this story, my lord.
Hey, this is the answer to anyone who's like, not all men. 70,000 is a lot of fucking men.
I'm a not all man guy. I've made this argument a lot, and it really does.
It's not an argument you should ever use when someone is talking about the bad behavior of some men.
Oh, I've done it many times, and it has. Can I tell you? I can think of 2 times. It didn't go good for me with the women I was talking to. They were in disagreement. But I guess it's like, for me, and I won't do it again because of what you're saying. It's just like not a smart thoughtful thing to do when someone's talking about it. But it's just hard for me to believe that many of the men that I know and trust and probably love are somewhere on this scale, or where am I on this? And it's like, I don't understand. I guess I just don't understand the behavior. And it's partly because I've not been a victim of it. And no matter how much empathy I have, it just makes me feel like it can't be widespread, because I got 19 guys from high school that I'm in a chat group. None of these
in
guys.
the U.S. alone,
yeah,
there are nearly 500,000 women who are sexually assaulted every year. And those are the ones that are reported. There's not one guy, some super busy dude, running around the United States sexually assaulting all.
And assault is the worst, but harassment or
let's even leave harassment out of it, right? Because some of your friends are sexual harassers. That. Look at Neil Gaiman.
Yeah, I saw that I just went through your Blue Sky. You're like, everybody needs to read this. I haven't read that yet, but what's that book? Everyday Sexism. What's the author of that? That really resonated with me.
I'm just saying, someone who has sexually assaulted a woman.
Oh, no doubt.
Someone. And it's maybe somebody you like and respect.
Or love. And and have on I know, that's why.
I have loved Neil Gaiman. I have loved his writing.
I know. I'm so afraid that someone is going to accuse Fred Rogers of something, even though he's gone.
Oh, no. Come on.
His wife said he's not a saint. I don't know what
but also Jimmy Carter wasn't a saint because he had lustful thoughts in his head, right? Remember? He had lust in his heart.
I'm like, if lustful thoughts in your head are bad, then I'm a monster, and so is every single man and a lot of women. I know.
Oh yeah, me. Definitely. I've seen Hugh Jackman. Look.
What's the Neil Gaiman?
We talked before about the fact that this election should be a clarion call to men everywhere, that sexism is ruining the world, right? I really want men, especially white men, to look at what's happening. Women are doing worse now. Women are, at this moment, less likely to get a promotion, less likely to get venture capital funding, less likely to get hired into management than they were 5 years ago. We've slid back. And it's like, we as women can't do anything about that. It's the same as people of color can't do anything about that, right? And it's the same thing with these bad actors. We just have to stop lionizing them. We have to stop giving them our attention. Like you said it yourself, like stop being deranged by Trump. Stop being deranged by him. And the way you do that is by ignoring it and focusing your attention. And I'll say one more thing to circle it back to where we started when I was talking about the book I'm writing. I have found so many people, white men in history who were fantastic, anti-racist, advocates for the poor and the marginalized. And we have forgotten all of them while we fight over whether to keep a statue of Robert E. Lee up. If what you're concerned about is preserving history, then let's preserve the history that's worth your attention and memory. There's so many white people that will not make you feel bad, that will make you feel proud.
You'll compromise if they'll take down Confederate statues. You could replace it with a good white man?
No, I don't believe in statues. I'm just saying, you want to remember white history? That's fantastic. Let me give you, don't remember the history of people that should be forgotten, who were shitty. You don't believe in
statues, but my guess is you have a little Buddha sitting around there somewhere.
I have many Buddhas sitting around.
I do too. I've even got a.
I have many.
I've got a Seneca bust. I've got a Stoic. I've got a couple of Buddha heads. Those are statues.
I have Kuan Yin, the goddess of compassion.
Oh. I got to get myself a Kuan Yin. Those aren't statues the way that you're talking about statues.
No, those are reminders for me.
Right, me too.
Those center me and remind me.
I had a statue,
I don't lionize them.
I had a Buddha statue in the driveway outside and just sitting there cross-legged, and it had like a little tray of offering, right, or of begging, and I put $1 in there. Mm-hmm. And it was there for 6 weeks. I put a rock on it, folded up. It was there for like 6 weeks. And finally it disappeared. And I don't know if a delivery person took it, if my daughter took it, or if it blew away. But I highly recommend people try this social experiment, and they should put a camera on it. Anyway, getting back to what we're talking about, I want to specifically
discuss a little bit more about how we're dealing with all this and how you're looking at it. But specifically, you said Trump should be ignored, but you don't mean he shouldn't be covered. How do we cover this guy? What did we learn the first time? What are we already doing wrong in journalism and media? Ideally, how should he be covered?
Okay, so let's start with the middle of your question, which is what did we learn? As an industry, we've learned nothing at all. Because we are doing the exact same things. What are we already doing wrong? We're doing exactly what we did before. Look at all the coverage.
Clicks, and if the goal, though, matters, to get clicks and make money, doing the same thing probably works. If the goal is to create better, transparent journalism and not fall for things like palace intrigue or click the shit that he's distracting us with, what is the goal in terms of how we should cover him and not take the bait? Sorry to interrupt you.
I mean, it depends on what your goal is as a journalist, right? Yeah. Like I am one that believes journalism should simply be nonprofit. The entry of venture capital into journalism has been the death of American journalism. But the goal for me as a journalist is to empower the public through credible information and useful information, right? Credible information is that which has been fact-checked and as a journalist, my job is to verify that it is as true as I can verify. That is what empowers people, which means that covering all the ludicrous statements that he makes, let's invade Greenland, I'll let the diplomats respond to that, but it's not worth headlines. It's not worth headlines to talk about Steve Bannon saying he hates Elon Musk and Elon Musk is evil. What is important is to understand the power that Elon Musk had to remove research into childhood cancer from a spending bill, from an omnibus spending bill. The actual things that are happening that affect people's lives, that's what's important. Covering these policies that will, in the end, we're seeing a lot of these fuck around and find out videos already, and Trump's not even president, right? These videos in which Trump voters are coming to realize what Trump's plans are and what that means. And one of them that I saw recently was a female veteran was at Walgreens, and another veteran was in front of her, and he was getting his prescription, and the pharmacist said, by the way, we're not going to be honoring this insurance anymore after January 20th. And he blows his lid, right? And she's like, I'm sorry, but the administration has said they're going to make all these cuts to the VA. They're going to make all these cuts to different healthcare programs, and we can't deal with that uncertainty. So we're just not honoring this insurance going forward. And he's like, what am I supposed to do? I live off my disability. I live off my blah, 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 blah. And the female veteran behind him is like, yeah, you're probably going to lose that too. And he's like, no one ever told me that. No one ever told me that this is what they were planning to do. And of course, people did. Right? But he was probably, and again, I'm making assumptions here, but he was probably watching media like Fox or some of the other right-wing ones that didn't tell him that.
He didn't hear it.
No. And if he did hear it, he didn't hear it.
Right.
Right? He thought it was coming from the liberal woke media, and he didn't believe it.
Right.
Like, this is what journalism is supposed to solve. And if we can bring people verified truth that is useful for them, that's my goal in life. So covering all these stupid statements that Donald Trump makes, like they did during the first one where they were obsessing over his tweets, and not only that, but you will not survive that emotionally. It's toxic.
Do you have any discipline or rules around social media and your usage of it?
Oh, I have so much discipline around it. I don't have any social media apps on my phone except for Instagram, which I'm about to get rid of because Zuckerberg. But the only reason I had Instagram on my phone is because it needs your camera, right? Other than that, if I'm going to interact with social media, it will be at my desktop computer or my laptop. They go dark. There are timers on all of my social media.
Really?
And they go dark. My phone goes dark at 9 p.m. because that's when I'm supposed to be winding down and starting my bedtime routine. So my phone literally goes black and white, and it doesn't connect to the internet anymore. I can't get my emails anymore. Like, I have a lot of discipline around it because I've seen the neuroscience. I know what it does to my brain.
Yeah. I've seen it too, and I don't care. I don't care what it's doing to me.
I guess you're also eating as much ultra processed food and hot dogs as possible.
No, I wouldn't do that. No, I think I'm totally addicted to it. And I think that I feel like I have to do it for my work. But you're absolutely right. And I want to be more like you, which is why I asked the question. I figured, knowing you, that you would have at least thought about it, if not actually implemented it. So I'm happy to hear that what else? So not on your phone. It goes dark at a certain time.
I only use certain social medias. I quit Facebook in 2018. I don't use Threads. What is I don't even know them all.
Threads.
I don't use Pinterest. I haven't gone on Reddit, and I can't even tell you how long. Basically, the only ones I use are Blue Sky, and I use LinkedIn the way everybody else does, which is like every once in a while I go on there and see who's messaged me. So my use of social media, period, is pretty limited. Obviously, look, I'm a professional author. If I have a book coming out or a project coming out, I am legally required to promote all of the stuff I'm doing. I will do that. But other than that, for personal reasons, and I am a blogger.
That's why I get hung up. I do the daily podcast and it's independent, so I promote it every single where. I think if you're not doing it, then you're not going to be able to do the type of work that you want to do and that you feel good about doing. But I wish I would love to not be into it, have somebody else doing it for me, obviously, but I'm not there. So I feel like I gotta stay connected to it. But it definitely has the effect on me that you're describing. Not only the things that you see, but the things that you post, not getting necessarily the traction that you think it deserves. Or more importantly, one thing that always gets me, I'm like, I don't care that this didn't get something, but I can't believe that did. And that loses me every time. It's like, that's bullshit, or that's this. And I'm like, and I'm over here doing, it's an easy thing for a comedian or a journalist to talk about because you put a lot of work into a thing. And meanwhile, this guy over here, grilled a steak or unpackaged a new tool and he's got 5 billion views. You're like, what am I doing wrong? I think I need to do more tool reviews.
Right. Exactly. Some 22-year-old girl does a dance in front of her closet and has 5
I wasn't going to say that because, listen, attractive women with whatever, whether it be face or body, like the amount of followers that they have. I talk about this about my daughters. I'm like, what percentage of your following do you think is just there for your appearance? And do you care? Like, it's a lot because you don't know more than 100 people and you have like 2,000 people following you. Why do you think it's because you're so good at lip syncing? Like, do you think that's why?
Harsh. But also very true. I don't want to be involved with somebody who doesn't care what I think. I don't want to connect with someone who doesn't care what I think.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. And luckily, that's not the reputation of somebody dancing in front of their closet. Nothing against dancing in front of your closet is not the reputation I have. And so most of my followers don't come to me for that reason. So I'm lucky in that way. I don't have to make that decision. But look, what we're talking about here is keeping your mental health in a period of time in which institutionally the world is designed to degrade your mental health.
Yes.
Systematically, it is designed to degrade your mental health. And that brings me back to self-care, which in its origins with Audre Lorde was about revolutionary self-care. Self-care as a radical act of resistance. Audre Lorde wrote that book during her struggle with cancer. And she was not talking about trips to the spa or buying yourself a glitter pen. She was talking about in a world which was not only not designed to support you, but was designed to actually actively degrade your physical and mental health. Self-care is an act of resistance. Joy is an act of resistance, right? And as we move forward into a world that is going to make us desperately unhappy, showing yourself kindness and compassion and investing in play and laughter and joy is revolutionary. You're not only doing this for yourself, you're making it okay for others to do the same. We've talked before about the parties that I throw every year because I throw 4 every year. But these aren't just things I do for myself because I love them. It's also, I want to give the other adults in my life permission to dress up in costumes and be silly and like spend hours of at least 4 days a year just being happy. in the presence
You
of
have
others.
to wear a costume to your party? It makes me self-conscious.
Halloween, yes, you
Okay.
have to. And there's a theme every year. This year's
Right.
theme is villains. Yeah. But the other ones, costumes are not mandatory, but encouraged. Right.
Okay.
So if you're coming to Midsummer Night's Drink, a lot of people wear fairy wings. If you're coming
I'll wear fairy wings. I could do that.
see, there you go.
Or
Right.
something
If you're coming to Party Gras, people dress in purple and yellow and green. And for Ludachristmas, everyone comes dressing like they're going to go to an Atlanta strip club. Right. So it's just encouraged. I just want people to give themselves permission to play. Play is an inherent human need. Our species needs play. It doesn't need work. We can survive without work. We can't survive without play. Prioritize it.
I love it. I love it all. Our conversations are profoundly impactful to me and so many other people. I always get such great feedback. I am so grateful to you every time you join me. Today was really special. It always is. Thank you so much for talking to me. It's great insight and advice and guidance, and I really appreciate it.
It's good to see your face and hear your voice. Happy 2025? ?
There you go, Celeste Headlee. So good. And we had a long conversation after. I really enjoy those chats, and I hope that you do as well. I know you do. I always hear great feedback, and share them with your friends. Any part of it that you liked, let me know, and I can share that, maybe just that part as well. On social media, always love your suggestions for clips. That's how you promote your show these days, and I get to talk to the smartest people in the world, so let's get those clips out there. Effort number 3. Okay, that's it. That's all I've got for you on today's show. Ron Gonzalez, Celeste Headlee, your good stuff, the headlines and best clips from yesterday that I could find. It's a lot of work. I cannot do it without you. Please sign up for a paid subscription if you haven't already. You can upgrade your subscription if you can afford to. And I thank you to all who do, because you are why I'm able to take my girls to ski for a couple of days. It ain't cheap, that's for sure. And it's where I like to spend my money, is experiences with them now that they're 17 and 19. So really looking forward to a couple days with them. You bumblebees listened all the way to the end, didn't you? I love you. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow with Aaron Carroll, and any other time on the Discord platform. You can connect with people if you haven't. Just jump on there. John Carroll's often in there. He is singer-songwriter. He's won the awards, all of them. We love him. We're excited to have him in Vegas. Here he is singing us out.
Making sense.